Hello, Movie Crusaders, and welcome to my latest episode. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today we have another massive review roundup. I've been on vacation this week, so it's been a lot of me catching up on films that are on streaming that I have not got to see over the last few weeks. First things first, we'll go ahead and start with Disney Plus's Elemental. Elemental came out during the summer, but I did not make it out to theaters to see it. I said on the channel previously that I would watch it when it came out on Disney Plus, which was this past week. Now, for me, Pixar hasn't really been the strongest of late, enough to the point that Brian and I shot a film, or an episode, I think a year ago, where we were saying, is Pixar dead or dying? Because the lack of strong films coming out of the Pixar, camp. And with Elemental, this was one of those films that the trailer, really didn't sell much to me at all, enough to the point where I didn't care to go see it in theaters, and I waited for it to pop up on Disney Plus, which I think outside of Lightyear, this is one of the first Pixar films to actually get released in theaters in a while, because they were all just going straight to Disney Plus. But Elemental did have something that was a little bit unique, a little bit different, that kind of reminded me of old school Pixar, which was take something that we don't look at normally, such as the elements, and humanize them to a point, and make a world, much like kind of like Zootopia did with Disney. Is you got this world. I don't think they actually ever give it an actual name. I think they just say it's a city, where Elemental City, or however you want to call it, where fire, water, land, and air all live as residents. Now, this film does kind of run a lot more on because it's Pixar, runs more on like the minorities, and literally the start of the film is like fire coming on a boat like Ellis Island, and then having their names changed to more easier acceptable names for people to say and stuff like that. So this does run on a very much of a minority immigrant kind of storyline. Fire sticks with fire, water sticks with water, air with air, and ground with ground. The main story follows Ember, played by Leah Lewis. She's this young, very full of life character who helps runs her father's shop, but eventually wants to take over the shop herself. But she has one very nagging problem, is that she's got a very short fuse with her temper when it comes to customers, which, working in retail, I can relate. And because of that, whenever she blows a fuse, she kind of implodes. And by doing so, she kind of destroys everything around her. Luckily, her shop is very fire-tardant because, she's fire. But her father basically tells her that she won't be able to take over the shop until she is able to control her anger. He's getting older, he's getting sicker, so he basically gives her the chance to run this big sale. And in the middle of doing that sale, she gets overwhelmed by all the customers, goes downstairs, blows up, which blows a water pipe, which allows Wade, who is a water inspector, or building inspector, who is a water character, to basically show up and find out that her father has so many citations that it's going to shut down their business. And it's up to Ember to basically try to talk Wade out of doing that, as well as help Wade with some issues as he's dealing with as well. Wade also voiced by Mamadou Athie. And that's kind of where the story goes, and this kind of develops a relationship between Ember and Wade, and obviously fire and water, they don't mix, but this relationship starts between them, and that's kind of where the story of Elemental goes, is that do you stay within what you're safe with the rest of your elements, or can you love and branch out to other elements and kind of learn to grow as a society. Like I said, very Pixar-like. But for me, with Elemental, this actually worked really, really well. Like, I bought into the story. I bought into these characters of Ember and Wade and the rest. In terms of a cast, I will say this, Leah Lewis, she was driving me crazy through most of this film because she sounds like Florence Pugh when she's doing an American accent. So I kept thinking it was Florence Pugh, and then Mamadou Athie, he kind of is doing it reminds me of like Dane Cook meets Zachary Levi, or like Skylar Austin. I know I just gave you 3 actors, but his voice sounds like that. So it was kind of throwing me throughout most of the film. Other than that, it's a relative no-name cast outside of Wendy McLendon-Covey, who plays Gail, and Catherine O'Hara, who plays Brooke, Wade's mother. But that's I think that's part of the thing that works really well with this film, is that we're not having this big, all-star voice cast where we're hearing Tom Hanks or Tim Allen or Chris Evans or something like that. We're basically listening to these characters, and we're basically, enjoying the world we're building. That's one thing that Pixar has always done really well, and something that they do great in Elemental, is they take these elements and they find ways to make the world around them feel unique. There's certain things that happen in the film with fire or with water or with cloud or with the air and the ground, that's like they do certain things that are like everyday things, but they element it up to a point where it's unique to them, but it's normal to us. And there's a lot of times while watching this movie where I was just like, that was actually pretty clever. I actually really enjoyed what they did there. So the world, the building that they build inside this film is incredibly well done. Visually, the movie looks great, which has never been a problem for the most part with Pixar. Everything Pixar does usually looks beautiful. And the story itself, it's not a new story. It's not something that we've never seen before. It's a story we've seen many, many, many times before. But I still enjoyed the story that we got. I had the emotional heartstrings with these characters. I believed the relationship between Ember and Wade throughout this film. I believed the issues that they're going throughout the film. And for the most part, I actually really enjoyed this movie quite a bit. It definitely exceeded my expectations and reminded me of old school Pixar. And I think it's a step in the right direction for Pixar. I hope that their next film, which I don't remember what it is off the top of the head right now, hopefully it's not another sequel and it's something original like Elemental, could maybe put Pixar, not necessarily back on the map, they were never off the map, but could put enough goodwill behind the Pixar name that they build off of Elemental and get Pixar back up there as one of the top animated companies out there on the market, because they've really kind of lost a step or two and have kind of fallen down to third or fourth in my opinion in terms of animation films. So for me, Elemental is definitely a film it's funny, has emotional weight to it, has a ton of heart with its characters. I even got choked up at certain points in the film, but I actually really, really enjoyed this film quite a bit. One of my more surprised films of the year, and I definitely think if you guys have Disney Plus, you guys should check it out. And many of you maybe saw it in theaters, so you guys are like, Sean, we know this, we saw it already. Well, I'm late to the party. But yeah, Elemental, I'm going to give a 92%. It's definitely something I would recommend for anyone who wants to see Pixar at their best. Going to our next film, we are going to Hulu with Vacation Friends 2. Now, this is a movie that I remember when the first one came out, went in with relative low expectations because it just looked like a random Hulu comedy with John Cena and Little Rel Howery. And it was fine for what it was. Like, it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. It was something that you could turn your brain off to for an hour, 40 minutes, and watch John Cena kind of stretch his comedic wings before Peacemaker and all that stuff kind of happened. But they decided to come back around for a sequel, which, like I said, I liked the first one enough to want to check out the sequel. This time around, they are going to the Caribbean for Ron and Kyla, who, John Cena and Meredith Hagner. They got married at the end of the first film, but they never got a proper honeymoon. So Marcus, played by Lil Rel Howery, and Emily, played by Yvonne Orji, they basically just said, hey, we're going to take you here so you guys can have a proper honeymoon, while also Marcus is also trying to do a big deal for his construction business with this group. So it's kind of where the makings of the story goes. Now, in comes in Steve Buscemi, who plays Reese Hackford, who's Kyla's father, who just got out of prison and clearly has some plans up his sleeve while he's there visiting his daughter, who also he has never met Ron before. So you have that kind of almost like Meet the Parents kind of vibe to it with Ron and Reese. But yeah, like I said, if you enjoyed the first film, you're going to enjoy this one. It's going to hit a lot of the same beats, but also it's different in a way because you are adding this criminal aspect to it, whereas with the first film was more or less just this very dry couple with this very extreme couple and how they mesh and how they they get along but don't get along at the same time. There's a lot of the beats of the first film. In this one, they've all gotten used to each other. They're all friends with each other, so you don't have that element there really anymore because they're all accustomed to how they act. But it's more Ron, John Cena's character, being out of his element because everyone likes Ron and Ron likes everybody, but Reese does not like him. And it's a lot of Ron trying to get Reese's acceptance for marrying his daughter, as well as Marcus trying to close this big deal for his company with this criminal aesthetic happening in the film throughout. And a lot of the time it does work. It's not, one of the top films of the year, but everyone in this movie seems to be having a fun time. And it's one of those films, it's a harmless comedy. It's not going to be remembered 3 weeks from now. It's one of those things where I totally forgot about Vacation Friends, the first film, until they released the second one. I was like, oh yeah, that movie happened a few years back. I'll check out the sequel. And if this is something that they want to keep doing, if they want to make a third one or a fourth one or a fifth one, as long as they get this core four back for it, I'm here to check it out. Like I said, it's on Hulu. It's not offending anyone. It's not, doing anything to be actively bad. It just is these four characters hanging out and having fun and having wild antics ensue and just enjoying the film for what it is. So, like I said, Vacation Friends 2, if you enjoyed the first film, I think you should definitely check out the second one. I think you won't be disappointed. If you've never seen them, I would probably watch the first one first, and if it's something that you like, then definitely check out the second one. But I definitely wouldn't watch the second one before the first one. Not that there's like story points that won't make sense. It's just use the first film to kind of get used to the characters and accustomed to them. And if it's these characters you like after the end of the first film, then you will enjoy the second one. So for me, I'll give Vacation Friends 2 a 63%. Sticking with Hulu, we're going to talk about the film Theater Camp. This was a movie that was released in theaters, but it was more of a kind of like an independent film. It wasn't wide released or anything like that. But this was a movie that was very high on Brian's list for more anticipated of the year. But Brian went and saw it, and it became his least favorite film of the year. So I watched it, mainly because Brian hated this movie so much that I was like, I gotta see how bad it is. Plus, my worst film of the year list was pretty sparse so far. I've been actually relatively lucky for the most part on bad films. So I figured, if I hate it, it'll go on the worst list. If I don't hate it, then Brian's going to be disappointed in me because he hated it so much. Theater Camp basically follows a theater camp. It's kind of like a mockumentary style. They're shooting the kind of everything that's happening because the person who runs the camp, Joan, played by Amy Sedaris, she falls into a coma at the very beginning of the film, and her son, Troy, played by Jimmy Tatro, has taken over the camp, and they're kind of shooting around the camp to kind of like, boost some stuff, and also to kind of show Joan when she wakes up from her coma about what's going on. It also stars Ben Platt as Amos and Molly Gordon as Rebecca Diane, who she's also partially directing the film as well with, the other director is Nick Lieberman. The rest of the cast follows. You got Noah Galvin, who plays Glenn. You've got Ayo, I always say her name wrong, and I apologize because I love her. Ayo Adibri, who plays Janet. Maybe people know her from The Bear. She was also in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. She voiced April O'Neil. Also, you got Nathan Lee Graham, who plays Clive. And then a very young cast of campers. But it's kind of trying to do something like I think the group would be like the same comedic group who does like Best in Show and like The Mighty Wind. I think it's Christopher Guest is the director for that. It's very much that kind of style comedy where it's very kind of dry and kind of almost mean comedy where people are just, talking down to everyone and kind of back talking and stuff like that. And it's, potential funny lines if you're in on the joke or if you appreciate the lines. But a lot of the characters here, which was I think Brian's main problem and partially my problem with this film, is that outside of like 1 to 2 characters, a lot of these characters aren't necessarily that likable. Ben Platt, I liked Ben Platt in Pitch Perfect, but since like Dear Evan Hansen and there's a wedding film earlier this year, or it might have been last year. Was it The People You Invite to the Wedding or The People We Hate at the Wedding? Ben Platt has just become this very unlikable character. And I don't want to necessarily blame the actor, but he's gotten to this point where every time he's in a film, I just know I'm gonna hate his character, and he's got a very punchable face now. And Ben Platt's character Amos is such a he's such a codependent, self-absorbed jackass through 98% of this film. And in the last 2% of the movie, they give him some kind of clarity or kind of emotional like story to make you try to like him. But at that point, 98% of the film, he's just been this just raging douche through all this, just being mean to kids and mean to, Molly Gordon's Rebecca character, who's kind of her, his best friend. That he's just an unlikable character, and Ben Platt's just constantly playing these kinds of characters. And I hope eventually he starts to pick roles that kind of puts him out of that. Because it's starting to get to the point where I just don't want to see Ben Platt on screen anymore. I know he's talented, but God, I just don't care to watch him anymore in anything. Molly Gordon, I actually enjoy her in a lot of things. In this movie, she's kind of almost playing a lot like Ben Platt to a point, except she's given a little more to do. She has to act a little more selfish, and I think in a good way, not in a bad way. But once again, it's just a lot of these characters aren't... They jump around on so many different things because the style of this movie is very annoying. I think if they just would have shot this movie straight up and not done a mockumentary style, I think this movie would have worked a ton better. I think it would have flowed better. I think the characters probably could have been could have stood out a little better. But Molly Gordon's character is another one of those where she's utilized as one of the main characters, but she's not necessarily really likable in terms of a character either. And when you have two leads in Ben Platt and Molly Gordon that are both kind of playing the same kind of character, it makes the movie kind of not watchable to a certain point. But same thing with Ayo, who plays Janet. She's not given enough time to kind of grow as a character. When she's on screen, she's fine, but this is one of those things where she's just not utilized well enough for you to give a shit about the Janet character outside of she's a person who got the job who should not have gotten the job, and she's just kind of trying to learn as she goes. But she is also kind of stuck up in this film as well. I think this movie in itself, I think would have worked better as like a 6 to 10 episode series where they would have, spread out these characters a little more, given them more room to breathe, give them a little more room to grow. And I think these characters would have actually worked a lot better with that than in a 90-minute film where they're kind of jostling through all these different, kid characters, which all the kid characters I think are actually great in the film. And then all these other actors. I mean, I think Nathan Lee Graham as Clive, I think he's funny. I think the big standouts for me in terms of the adults, Jimmy Tatro as Troy starts off one way, but really grows as the character moves through the film. He's got a good character arc through this. I actually really enjoy him as an actor, and I actually enjoyed him as Troy in the film. To me, the MVP is Noah Galvin. I think he is fantastic as Glenn. He's the one character that you actually are rooting for throughout this film. He's the one character that's constantly trying to help everyone. He's nice. He's not being a jerk to anybody throughout the film. And he's the one character that is just underappreciated by the higher-ups, but appreciated as hell from the the kids. And he gets those shining moments throughout the film. If anything, this one movie is that it's a standout performance for Noah Galvin, and someone that people should take notice for, because I'm actually really excited to see what he does next. Theater Camp as a whole doesn't work great, but has bright moments that work really well. But the problem is you're surrounded by too many unlikable characters. The shooting style of the mockumentary does not work, and there's just too many characters and not enough time issued to them to really flesh them out outside of maybe 2 or 3 characters overall. So I don't think it's the worst film of the year like Brian thinks. I think it's a below average film that has potential to have been great had they done it as a one series show of like 6 to 10 episodes. But doing it as a movie is really what hurt it overall. For me, I'm going to give Theater Camp a 44%. Moving over now to Amazon Prime, we've got A Million Miles Away. This is based on the true story of Jose Hernandez, who is a migrant worker who became the first migrant worker to ever become an astronaut and fly in space. This is starring Michael Pena, who I'm a big fan of. I love him as an actor. He's criminally underrated Like, he's a great comedian, but I think he's also a really great actor in himself. We're actually going to be talking about him on this week's episode of the Movie Crusaders as my film End of Watch, where he starred with Jake Gyllenhaal. He's such a great actor, and he really gets to show that in 8 Million Miles Away. Also in this, Rosa Salazar, who plays Adela, his wife in the film, I think she is great in this. I think that she's also another actress who's criminally underrated. I think she does a fantastic job in this. I think her and Michael Pena have great chemistry together as a couple. I think the story that they're telling throughout this is a great inspirational story, because you got Jose, who since a kid has always just wanted to go up into the stars and be an astronaut, but because he's a migrant worker and he's not, the typical, person that NASA looks at for an astronaut, he keeps getting overlooked. And it isn't until he has the conversation about being an astronaut to Adela that he finally realizes, it's not good enough for me to just say I want to be an astronaut and then, put in an application to be one. I have to put the work in as well. And he's a hard worker. I mean, he's, one of the smartest people, in his school. He became an engineer, but that's not good enough. There's other things that they look at besides just being an engineer. And it's that motivation from Adela that Jose basically decides, there's all these other things that these people who get picked over me have. If I can do those things, then what is stepping in my way outside of the color of my skin? And Jose is this driving force throughout this film, and Michael Pena does a phenomenal job of portraying that throughout the movie, of a person who has this dream that he's always wanted to do, but it's always just been out of arm's reach because of how his lifestyle was and how he was brought up, and because he doesn't have the money to do this, or he didn't go to the military, or he didn't do this, that's holding him back. And it isn't until he realized, no, I can do this, and I can show them I can do this, that he's actually given the chance of a lifetime to do that. And it's a very powerful story. I think in terms of the cast around him, you got also Garrett Dillahunt, who's really solid in the film. He plays the guy from NASA who basically gets to pick teams. You also got Sarah Yu Blue, who plays Calpena Chalal. I know I said that wrong. I apologize. She's really good in the moments. She's got Eric Johnson as Clint Logan. He's really good in the scenes we get. Bobby Soto, who plays Jose's cousin Beto, or as a Benito. He's really good in the film. Julio Cesar Cedillo plays Salvador, Jose's father. He's really solid in the movie. But like I said, the two standouts are definitely Michael Pena as Jose and Rosa Salazar as Adela. I think this movie, if you're looking for an inspirational film about persevering over the odds of your background and your the color of your skin and stuff like that, I think 8 Million Miles Away is a great film to watch. I think it's a actor showcase for Michael Pena and Rosa Salazar. I think they're both fantastic in the film, and it was just an enjoyable watch. It's right at around the 2-hour mark. You also, like I said, because it's based on a true story, you get to see the real Jose and stuff like that at the end of the film. It was a fun experience. It was an enjoyable experience throughout. Now, is it a movie that I'm probably gonna go and rewatch multiple times over and over and over again? No, but it was definitely a film that I was glad that I checked out, and it was something that I would recommend to people who want to see a story of persevering the odds and reaching for your dreams and trying to achieve them. And I think 8 Million Miles Away does a great job of doing that. So I'm going to give 8 Million Miles Away an 86%. Now, our last film. This is a movie that I, outside of a month ago, never knew existed. It wasn't until our fall preview, where we were talking about movies that were coming out this fall, that Brian brought this movie up and said that if it wasn't for Across the Spider-Verse, this movie would be his #1 animated film of the year, if not one of his, top films of the year. And it's a film on Netflix called Nimona. Like I said, I had never heard of this film. I didn't even know this movie existed. Now, granted, he showed me pictures of it, and I was like, I think I recall seeing that lead character, but there's like 1,000 animated films that come out every year. If they don't have usually the big, Sony, Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks on it, 9 times out of 10, I don't really bat an eye at it. So it wasn't something that I paid attention to. But with Brian kind of pushing me to watch it, I finally gave it a watch. And Nimona came out, I think, in June on Netflix, so this was definitely been out a few months. And like I said, like me, a lot of people probably have not seen this movie or have given it a chance. But in terms of the cast, you got Chloe Grace Moretz. She plays the title character Nimona. You got Riz Ahmed, who's fantastic in almost everything he's in outside of Venom. You got Beck Bennett. You got RuPaul. It's one of those stories. It's like, it's not the cast that's going to get you there, but it's the story and the animation style and the uniqueness of it that is going to get you to watch Nimona. And I agree with Brian. This is one of the best films of the year. It's one of the best animated films of the year. It's right up there with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse as one of the best films of the year. This movie blew me away. What blew me away about this is the uniqueness of the story. We kind of live in this futuristic medieval world. You got knights and all this kind of stuff, and you got monsters, but it's also got very futuristic tech and technology and TV and all this kind of stuff. So you're melding these two worlds together, and it's very interesting. It looks really cool, and the world, much like with Elemental, it utilizes what it's doing to its best effects. It utilizes the futuristic world with the medieval world, and it makes it very fun and an enjoyable world to watch. I love the world building that this show had. Also, I love the character names. Chloe Grace Moretz, like I said, she plays Nimona. Riz Ahmed plays Battlestar Boldheart. Badass name. Eugene Lee Yang plays Ambrosius Golden Leon. Or Golding Lawn? I don't know, I'm probably saying that wrong. Beck Bennett plays Sir Thaddeus Sherblade. I love the names. But the main story is we're following basically Battlestar Boldheart. He's this commoner, much like A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger. He's a commoner who wants to become a knight, and instead of jousting for it, he basically has to go through the trials to become a knight, and he succeeds at that. And when he's at his knighthood, something goes wrong, and he's accused of murdering the queen. And because of that, he's on the run, and he's hiding, and everyone's after him, which catches the eye of Nimona. Nimona is a very special girl who basically has been treated like a villain her whole life because she has special abilities. Basically, she can shapeshift into creatures, humans, anything. And because of that, she's looked at as a monster. And so she naturally thinks that she is a villain, and she sees Battlestar being treated as, public enemy number one because he kills the queen. So she wants to become his sidekick. And that's where the story of Nimona starts, is you got this great couple with Riz Ahmed and Chloe Grace Moretz as Battlestar and Nimona. They work beautifully together. Their banter back and forth, their chemistry back and forth is fantastic. And Nimona has, like I said, this dark side where she wants to be a bad guy and she wants to be a villain sidekick, but Battlestar is literally trying to basically clear his name because he knows he was framed and he's trying to figure that out. So Nimona helps him while trying to also kind of do things her way. And it's that fun balance of humor with heart and the uniqueness of the Nimona character with Battlestar, and just the way the world is, that works so beautifully well. The rest of the cast is great also. I love the Nimona character. If you loved Chloe Grace Moretz as Hit Girl in Kick-Ass, you're going to love her in this because she's basically another version of Hit Girl, even to the point where she's having a badass scene. They actually play the song from Kick-Ass that they use when Hit Girl is kicking people's butts or killing them in Kick-Ass. This movie lives and dies off of the relationship between Battlestar and Nimona, and it doesn't need to because that relationship is so strong and so good through this film that you just can't help but love these characters and just love the world that's around them. And just visually, this movie looks fantastic. I loved the story that we got. There was twists and turns along the way that worked really well for me. The animation style is fantastic. I wish this story could continue. When this movie ended, I didn't want it to end. I wanted to keep living in this world with these characters. This is also based on a book, but they've only made the one book. I hope that this does well enough to the point that people want to see more and we potentially get more books and potentially more movies, because I love to see more of this world and more of the characters of Battlestar and Nimona. I don't want to go too far more into it because I guarantee there's a lot of people who probably didn't get to see this film and don't know much about it. I feel like I already said too much. I know I haven't, but I feel like I did. But you guys should definitely check this out. This is on Netflix. This is one of my favorite films of the year. This is right up there with Across the Spider-Verse as one of the best films of the year for me. And this movie needs to be shouted out on the mountaintops to check out Nimona. Could not recommend this film more. I absolutely adored this film and its characters and its voice cast and its animation. Literally no regrets watching this film. I thank Brian for bringing it to my attention. And I can't wait to watch this again. I am going to give Nimona a 97%, my highest score of the year, right there with Across the Spider-Verse, which also got a 97%. I hope you guys enjoyed these reviews. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, you can follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, we have this week's episode of the Weekly Crusaders, where Brian and I talk about 2 movies that came out during this week in movie history. I did see A Haunting in Venice. I'm not going to shoot a review for it because I thought it was bland, like the previous 2 films. I said that if the reviews were good, that I would check it out. The reviews were good. I checked it out. It's just like the first 2 films. It's boring. It's bland. It doesn't feel original at all, which granted it's Agatha Christie. I know back then that was original, but I've seen this done so many times before better. I think that while it's got a great cast, I don't feel like they're utilized to their fullest potential, much like the previous 2 films before. So it's not bad, it's just not good, and I'm not going to waste a whole video on it. Coming up next also, though, tonight, Cassandra, which is one of my more anticipated films of the fall schedule, that gets dropped on Amazon Prime tonight. Whether there'll be a review for tonight, I don't know. It kind of depends on my schedule. I am pretty busy throughout the weekend, so if it's not out tonight, at the earliest, it will be out on Monday. Coming tomorrow on Hulu is No One Will Save You, which is another film that Brian and I have been very, very highly anticipating since we saw the trailer for. Once again, that review probably won't be up till Monday. Expendables or Expend4bles comes out this week as well. I haven't even seen the 3rd one, so I'm probably not going to see the 4th one until that probably goes out on digital, and then I'll probably just watch them all from there. Next week, we've got Saw X, which I won't watch because I don't think I've even watched like the last 3 Saw movies. And then we also got Gareth Edwards as The Creator, which, barring availability, I'll try my best to go check that out in theaters because that one does look intriguing enough to actually go back to the theaters to check out. And then at the end of the month, I will drop last year's Halloween show, where Brian and I talked about 2 movies a day, horror movies a day, based off of a topic for you guys to check out for this Halloween season. We have more eyes watching this show now than we did last year, so I'm going to drop that again for you guys to check out at the end of the month. We got plenty of videos to come up on, but bottom line, at the end of the day, 3 of these movies are definitely worth checking out, and Elemental, A Million Miles Away, and Nimona. So go out of your way to check those movies out. Let me know what you thought. Did you like them? Did you not like them? Did you agree or disagree? Let me know on that, and we'll be back for more videos on the Movie Crusaders. I'm Sean Wasserkrug. Until next time, in case we don't see you, go watch some movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.